Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third day of our 10th Freemind. Once again, we are beginning our works this morning with a panel that is very important, electronic cigarettes. My son believes that electronic cigarettes is less bad than the traditional one. What now? Vape attracts young people appealing to modernity. This panel will show the effects of health, aggressive marketing that today we see, the how frail regulation is, and public policies and educational practices to restrain or to check this new form of dependency. As a moderator, I'd like to call the state coordinator of the national program of the control of tabagism in São Paulo, a dentist, surgeon, sanitarist, and executive in health, master of health science by University of São Paulo, and in chemical dependency by Unifesp, and integrate several committees and groups in sciences nationally and domestically. She is very experienced and involved in public policy and health surveillance and also regulatory sanitation. Dr. Sandra Marques, welcome. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry it's so early, and because of that, we're not able to fulfill this auditorium. We have so many great things to come to share with you, and I'd like to thank your attendance, the space that Freemind always gives us, that we have been able to achieve every year regarding nicotine. Hi, Roberto, and understand that nicotina is also an important psychoactive substance. And what we're going to bring today is the issue regarding electronic cigarettes, which is a vehicle for the use of other psychoactive substances. We're very attentive to PL 399 of 2015, the trajectory of the marijuana agenda. We have to pay attention, and the use of tobacco, nicotine, and we have to pay very great attention regarding that. Today's panel will bring this contest to you, and several initiatives and different visions, perspectives, international with Juliana, national with Paulo, Sabrina, Wesley, but understand that we all need to talk about this subject. It's a moment, it's a time of union because we don't want a renormalization of the use of tobacco or nicotine. This is a moment of prevention that is important. Brazil has been acting toward that. It's important to bring this topic to the table, and the Congresswoman will talk about bills that we have trying to advance in the National Congress. In São Paulo, we have worked a lot in the local houses of representatives. Tomorrow, 8 a.m., we'll have a digital health panel talking about digital tools we have been using in the program of tabagism, surveillance, and recently I went to China and have brought several options to work in São Paulo. I think we have very important partnership. We're in Brasilia, of course, but São Paulo is one of the models to be able to promote to other states. I'd like to invite to come to the stage Dr. Paulo Correia, which was the coordinator of the Commission of Tabagism of SBPT and leader of the initiative Education Against Tobacco in Brazil. Hi, professor of the Medicine School of the Federal University of Ouro Preto, and is undergoing a doctor's degree in public health by the Federal University of Minas Gerais, founder and former executive secretary of the NGO Aliança de Controle de Tabagismo, which is a tabagism control NGO. And I'd like to also call to the stage Sabrina Pesman, which is going to bring her practical experience. She's a psychology. She's specialist in chemical dependency by Unifesp, former coordinator of the National Program of Tabagism Control in Rio de Janeiro, and also worked at Rio de Janeiro City's Council, member of the advisory board of ABEAD and also of ACT, specialist in short psychotherapy. See how our panel is being composed in such an enriching way to talk. Also, please, Wesley Bonfim come to the stage. He has a master's degree in public management by the University of Brasilia, a specialist in the judiciary police activities by the Fortune Faculty of Brasilia. Welcome to the stage, Wesley, and he's also a leader of the pilot center in the center to prevent and fight the use of drugs. He also promotes lectures and prevention actions in school, companies, and other organizations of civil society. It's always great to have you here, Wesley, to demystify the role of the police within the actions of prevention, whether federal police, civil police, the Ministry of Defense as a whole have been acting toward the prevention of against the use of psychoactive substances. We have to demystify this, and it's better to have a policeman than a drug dealer to do that. Then we have also Dr. Juliana Mejia. She's a social worker, master's degree in anthropology, and she's undergoing a doctorate in public health by University of Maastricht in the Netherlands. And she works both nationally and internationally in the prevention on substance use. She has taught at the uh, medical school of the University of Los Angeles and was an invitee in the Open Medical Institute and the Miami and Oregon University. She has carried out several research regarding substance use, implementation of programs. She has already published over 70 publications in Spanish, English, and Portuguese. Please, Dr. Juliana, if you can come on stage. I'd also like to call to the stage Congressman Gisela Simoni. She's a lawyer, a public servant, and congresswoman to the state of Mato Grosso. She's a former server of a PROCOL in Mato Grosso State. They are intersectorial sectors. That is, sectors that work together with the application and enforcement of our surveillance against tobacco and to also face abusive practices in this sense. She has a very solid actuation in defending public health and being the author of bills and proposals to fight against advertisement of e-cigarettes, especially the ones targeted at teenagers and children. She's also has an experience in state public management, and she's the author of the Bill PL 488 of 2023, which aims to change the penal code to include the act of selling, importing, offering, or promoting e-devices to smoke. And she's also a rapporteur of PL 949 of 2024, which is the National Plan of Attention Against Tobacco. That is when we met, right, in the National Congress, talking about the topic and the use of tobacco. So welcome all of you. I'm going to make a very brief, short introduction. If you could please turn on the slide. Well, we have to start by talking about prevalence of the use of e-cigarettes. Why we're talking about this today? We have to talk about this a lot from now on because the data we have in our surveillance have shown the greater use of nicotine, whether through e-cigarette or non-e-cigarette, but prevalence has increased and the pattern of consumption is focused most of all in young people. And it's a concern because the main experimentation of use happens in this age from 14 to 24 years of age, 18 to 24 years of age. That's what research says, but we have noticed, especially in São Paulo, much younger than that. 8.7 teenagers from 14 to 17 years have used the use of vape the past year. And this data is alarming. It represents 5 times more the consumption of conventional tobacco in the same age range. The WHO estimates that at least 15 million young people use e-cigarettes in the world. It's an epidemic that is growing. Let aside our tobacco one, but young people are beginning their lives in this area with e-dispositives, and we understand this is a door to other substances. And the use of these dispositives is 9 times greater than the adults when among young people. What are the determining factors to be invaded in Brazil, although it is forbidden since RDC 46 of 2009 and ratified with RDC 855 of 2024, bringing the issue of surveillance and education and health is what we're doing today. Flavored cigarettes, we have a PL since 2012 in the National Congress, a bill in Congress. Half the teenagers that smoke, 56% say they smoke flavored cigarettes. So how important it is to address this topic strongly in Congress so we can reduce this attractiveness of it. The regular use begins of these e-cigarettes, and they start using even alcohol with these cigarettes. 76% of the teenagers talk about this. The attempt to stop using it with DEFs, which is discourse based on loss and harm deduction, when we cannot believe in this because only 8.9% of teenagers affirm that they stopped smoking. And 44% of them went back to tobacco. So e-cigarettes is not a treatment of tabagism. We have therapeutic protocols for this. This discourse has been demystified in Brazil. Sometimes, for example, in China, there's a context that is quite important in this sense. Data have shown of the Ministry of Health has show that 2024 adults, 2.6% of adults used e-cigarettes, and this is a very high rate, which is nearly 25% greater than the prior years. So research have shown that we're using a renormalization of tobacco and initiation of nicotine addiction, perception of easier access. We have several studies. We have done one published in JBP of the perception of access made easy. What we lack in our country is intense monitoring, surveillance of a more informed society, of points where we can report when we see something like this and bring the context of how easy it is to use a forbidden product in this country. Wesley will talk a bit about that. Wesley, I'd like you to talk a bit about traffic, especially here in the federal district, how you're acting in this sense. I think it's important to evidence the flaws of our surveillance, of our inspections, and how we can improve, and impacts on health. Recently, the Secretariat of Health Surveillance has made an announcement, a technical announcement, saying how important it is to identify this disease against the disease that is related to the use of electronic cigarettes and the harm it causes by the substances to our lungs and in our body. Of course, there is also cancer. Cancer agenda is a very hot topic. We have to discuss it a lot within the context of the use of tobacco and alcohol.
We will address how we've been working with alcohol and tobacco in state according to this perspective of cross-cutting two themes that are very important, that until 2050 much more young people will have head cancer, throat cancer, and among other cancers due to the use of this substance. Metabolic diseases will have been increasing a lot due to this inflammation and also mental disorders. I do carry the flag of mental health, especially because we have the false perception of the use of legal drugs, especially nicotine. Nicotine has been, and we have mentioned that a lot in China. We talked about the importance of talking about nicotine as a self-medication for mental disorders that are not diagnosed. And we have a network of psychosocial attention that's unfortunately very frail and is not able very often to make a diagnosis or help us in treatment. And people end up self-medicating. It's a trend, a world trend. The industry used that during the pandemic because people started to smoke more in their houses and drink more in their houses. And we must understand that we'll face this context from now on. And mental health is a very important theme and must be treated just like other pathologies and with no stigma. We must talk about that. So let's talk about that with our guests. First, I'll invite Dr. Paulo Correa. A round of applause. Thank you, dear Sandra. Where's the ticker? Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's a pleasure to be able to discuss with so many friends and skilled people. Paulo truly had a great idea when provoking the table through talks. My son believes that e-cigarettes is less harmful than traditional one. What now? I thought about many possibilities of approaching that. As a professor, I could just start to talk about scientific articles, but I decided to do something different and think about as if I were a father or a family member thinking about that situation. I don't have any disclaimer to address. As a professor, I developed with a pharmaceutical laboratory a educational material for doctors because doctors do not recognize chronic DPOC. I did not use AI. I just came from a congress in São Paulo, and the speaker did not follow the theme, and the presentation was done by AI. Amazing. Well, unbelievable. So my question would be, is that kid smoking already, or would only a belief system? What society does, especially the tobacco and nicotine industry, they present the product as an entertainment. It's only a vapor, no water vapor to play. You can enter online and learn how to make the dragon or many of these other figures with smoke. Another thing is the pharmaceuticalization of the industry. So we're talking about the social environment. They start to put vitamin B12, melatonin, energy things for people. So present that device as if it were a health platform. So they are selling platform. Do e-cigarettes have nicotine? If you have not watched it, watch that Netflix film, Big Vape, the name of the film. My kid, there was even a program in Philip Morris, by Philip Morris in American schools, and they used to encourage people and even said that 97% safer than conventional cigarettes. When I started to juuling, I didn't understand it contained nicotine. And where did he obtain that information about e-cigarettes? That's something from the US and from an article from New York Times. Juul has bought advertising in Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, in 17 magazine and educational websites. So Juul was like bombing our children and youngsters with advertising. I like to show internal documents from the industry. This is here the UCSF website. And why youngsters are important for the industry. Young adults are the only source of reposition of smokers because smokers they smoke and they die. And less than one third of smokers they start after the age of 18. So that's the target audience of the industry. So they must advertise, encourage consumption. And here's a documental from the industry you can obtain online. When you consider today's youngster, he's a digital native. They have access to all these platforms. They listen to songs, gaming, and watches, and Juul is the electronic device that talks to that. It's not like in 1.0 cigarette anymore. And this is how Juul became viral. And I will play with you. Cross your hands who has ever worked on Apple and used Apple's marketing to do that. You have two with the hands crossed. So here are those who has worked in Apple and they made the design of the Juul e-cigarette. And this is not by chance. The Juul launches were paired with the iPhone launches. See, the design, the colors are similar. And then iPhone changed to gold. Juul launched blush gold. You can see they are very similar. When they launched silver and Juul launched e-cigarette silver. Is this a coincidence? No way. And when they launched the blue one, Juul also launched Blue Navy Juul, so the pattern is the same. Do you think their friends already use e-cigarettes? That's important, right? We as youngsters, the sense of belonging is very important for youngsters. We want to belong strongly to a group. And there's a study that shows that shows university students and medicine students in Brazil. They were aged from 15 to 29, and most of them were from 20 to 24. Three universities in the southeast, two universities in the other regions. The prevalence of experimenting with nargile and e-cigarettes was nearly 47%, and current use nearly 11%. What this study says, first of all, if you're a parent and you do not have an opposing attitude, or if you use e-cigarettes and nargile, you increase twofold the chance of your son becoming a user. If their friends smoke, two 1.33 times more chances. And if the brother or sibling smokes, this increases a little bit more. So the influence of the environment is evident. 93% of medicine schools learned about the harm of tabagism to health, and over 42% knew that nargile had led and they used it anyhow. There was a time in which closed doors was synonym of safety. In addition to their friends, who do they follow on social media? When they are in their rooms or using the products, they can enjoy the songs by Post Malone. I myself like Post Malone songs. You see that Post Malone advertises for Blue Sig USA, and he places in all his social media when they launch a new flavor. The girl here would be, you only need two things to enjoy summer, sunglasses and my blue. And here you have Post Malone advertising the new flavors of blue. So you have these things of influencers, people who have a large fan base, and the industry uses that very well. Here you have the Juul secret documents. They were recently released like 1 year ago. And you will see that this is Katy Perry. I don't know. I it's the one that used to sing "I Kissed a Girl." She was the American Idol judge. Her Katy Perry's hairdresser used to use Jewel, and the Jewel wanted very much to have Katy Perry become an ambassador of the brand, and they weren't able to reach her. You know what they did? They did through her hairdresser. They gave her a kit to him. And then the couple, the Hollywood couple, Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom, they began to be photographed in social situations and using Jewel. What do you think our kids think about this Jewel advertising? The we have the social environment and the public policies environment, if they are permissive, in the US it's extremely permissive. They were able to have parties to promote the product, distribute free samples, so that Jewel launch party strategy, as you can see on 4th of June, what did they do? You don't want to belong, so they put a professional photographer with a booth for you to take pictures, and they get your pictures and post them on social media. So it's the same language that was used by the industry in the past. There's a couple smoking. I think I'm in the right place. So the posters, the billboards, the same language, the use of hashtags, and every ad has a disclaimer, so the industries do that. So warning, this product contains nicotine, which is chemical and addictive. So this is to avoid them from being sued. So Juul puts there, so it's official post from by Juul. So the freedom of a Juul moment. Then there is a guy. Oh, how free I feel. So here's to show the use of influencers. In this case, an influencer attached to fashion and music. And he starts recruiting people to go to those Juul parties. And the kid went to the Juul party, he took a picture. CD does post the hashtag, be discovered, vaporized. And Juul official says, "You're looking good, Johnny." So here are the hashtags again. And the picture that the kid took, and the party became a Juul outdoor billboard, a Juul ad. With Asian demographics, the same thing, hashtags, looking good, and the girl became a jewel ad in order to bring more people to smoke. Here are what went viral. This is interesting. The industry used cutting edge research. What this study showed, it's done by AI and it's very interesting. It saw what brought more adherence and repercussion in social media. Only the refill of the product, 2 or 3 refills. The product and the electronic device, the packaging, what did they see? After studying over 500,000 images, they saw that what had more repercussion was photographing a person using the product. And this became a pattern, and that's repeated in every ad. Adolescence is a specific time. Mentally, teenagers have a search for new sensations and new groups, that big motivation to belonging, and a special sensitivity regarding their peer evaluation. So their brain is formatted by his group.
It's a synaptic phenomenon called phenomenon of the rope. Uh, some years ago, we thought that the neurons was a fixed structure, and it is not. It's a very plastic structure. So is the phenomenon of the synaptic bud cutting to reorganize the brain and make it more efficient. This is the process of maturing our brain. So cortical maturing, the bluer, the more mature. I will ask you to please support team click on this video so you can see the brain maturing. So you can see that throughout teenage years up to 21 years of age, the brain becomes mature. What does this mean in practice? Well, here I was showing how the neuronal rearrangement happens when you're a teenager. When you expose yourself to drugs, when you're at the specific moment when your brain is remodeling, you do synapses of chemical dependency. It will become more difficult to stop smoking because you have developed a neural networks of chemical dependency. And other slides. The brain of the teenager is like a Ferrari, but with weak brakes because the prefrontal part of the brain does not work. So showing what I said, that the industry needs to capture people. Teenagers are captured early. This is a very classic work of Brissol that showed that people start smoking before they're 13. They have the double of the difficulty to stop smoking when compared to people that start smoking after they're 17. And the reason you have learned right now. And to conclude, as a science person, I have to mention the literature. This is systematic review with meta-analysis. There was an extensive search from 2018 to 2024, only paper in English and Spanish. They found collected 50 papers that meet the inclusion criteria. So I'm not lying to you, as you can see. This belief that e-cigarettes are low risk and less harmful is one of the main reasons for the use. 14 of the 15 studies shows that perception of flavors that are attractive, also an important factor. 13 of the 50 studies. Curiosity of the product, boosted by marketing social network, 12 of the 50 studies. And believe that the use of e-cigarettes is socially acceptable, helps it to look cool, is also a common behavior among friends. So do they have the intention of beginning to use e-cigarettes the following year? In science, that's a very important predictor to know if the person's going to start or not. Though being susceptible to future tabagism is measured by 3 questions. which have been obtained from COMPAS, which is a Canadian study that studies processes of intervention in school communities. So the questions are immediate intention. Do you think we'll start smoking soon? Do you think you'll be smoking cigarettes in 1 year time? And if one of your best friends asked you, offered you a cigarette, would you smoke it? If any of these people answer any of them as option one, then they're susceptible to smoking. If there's no aptitude of imposition at home, if society are permissive, if public policies are not appropriate, if brothers, friends use it, if the industry is out of control, all of this will lead to the question that our son regarding our son or our parents will start smoking. I am Paulo Correa, and I thank you all for being here. Thank you, Paulo. Always amazing. Now we're going to listen to Sabrina bringing to us another perspective. I'll open to questions in the end, okay? You'll be able to ask questions. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sabrina Presman. I have no interest conflicts. I don't get money from electronic games, pharmaceutical industry, alcohol, or tobacco industries. But I'm a mother of two teenagers, one that has already tried e-cigarettes and another one that has not or not yet. And also, I do consume social networks, right, Paulo? And I'm also exposed to what Paulo said. Our idea here is to talk about the perspective of treatment, how we work in the clinical approach in this context. My son thinks the e-cigarettes are less harmful. What should I do in this case? Paulo, talk a little bit about that. In the teenager, we have emotional organization happening, brain and social reorganizations happening, and tobacco industry, social networks bring the vape to capture this core needs of belonging, relieving, and trying. It's seen as modern and harmful, and oftentimes the teenagers, they're not seeking for nicotine; they're searching for identity and connection. It grows because of the idea of it, not the substance. The advertising doesn't sell the substance nicotine. It sells what is in the surroundings of, your cooler, if you use a vape, in a modern static, as a sensation, a perception of being less harmful, and the technology involved. So the teenager is talking about identity and not the tobacco. That's what he searches. And that's what we're going to deal with. Why does it seem less harmful? Well, patients say, well, but it doesn't smell. I can smoke it and I don't have to brush my teeth, put some type of perfume. It's not uncomfortable. It goes unnoticed visually, has this sensation of being light and conceals a nicotine addiction, reducing the perception of risk. There's also normalization, as Paulo said, of social networks, bringing influencers, aesthetics that are young, viral content, and algorithms that reinforce this idea of presenting this as a possibility. And so the strategies to reach the teenagers are products that don't seem tobacco, sweet flavors, concealed marketing and social networks, that it's not clear that it's propaganda. It seems like it's a lifestyle. And uh, when they bring this matter of lifestyle to construct aesthetic identity should not be accessible, of course, since e-cigarettes, and we have the opportunities of listening to the congresswoman talking about that, sales is prohibited and so is manufacture, but unfortunately it's very easy to manufacture and to buy. The teenager will start because he's curious and then he'll continue because he needs it. Paulo mentioned Why does the teenager use cigarettes before traditional, now the e-cigarettes? Are several sentences of how these teenagers use the marketing strategies to capture teenagers very early in their ages. They also understand why the teenagers was an ideal target. Paulo mentioned the central nervous system, so it's a very unique moment in this sense because the teenager is most susceptible to social networks, industry, strategies, social matters are very important. His brain, his personality is still being creating. So several things that leads these teenagers to be a very easy target. Wow. So when people come to be treated, it's not a vape case. It's a set of things. A person that doesn't know how to deal with anxiety, the non-belonging in a group, that doesn't know how to cope with all the emotions that happen on this stage. Fathers in shock, loss, the teenager not wanting to talk, and oftentimes, vaping is a strategy that the teenagers using to deal with anxiety, depression, identity, the difficulty of belonging. And we need to go beyond this cloud of vapor. We focus so much on the cigarette and we don't understand that we have to extend our vision. Where I have two clips here, a 15-year-old boy from high school. He was sent from his mother and school. The complaint came from school with his mother there with him. He was very annoyed. His school performance reduced, and he's been smoking daily. First used a year ago in a party, and it evolved very quickly to daily use. That is very common in e-cigarette. The progression of dependency is much faster than conventional cigarettes historically, from a historical approach. It has menthol pods that is not by chance. It's a strategy to capture the teenagers. And when he wakes up, he uses it to be able to study. And before sleeping, he usually uses a lot within the family context. And talking about Lucas, he has craving throughout the day, an intense craving of smoking. So he thinks about vaping throughout the day, even in situations he shouldn't. He gets annoyed when he's not using, sometimes headaches, and he began smoking at a moment he was changing to another school where he had to. He started a new group of friends, and in this new group of friends, vape is very popular among his new friends, and he went along. He has a father who's a smoker of traditional, conventional cigarette, so it's an ambiguous model, but a mother that is desperate of having found his vape device and who's going to confront him more. His father says, at least it's not conventional cigarette. So it's not that bad that it's vape. So there's an ambiguous type of a vision perspective. And also a school is pressuring because his school now is harder, is more strict. So let's assess him to understand it better. So one of the scales that we use a lot is Eureka, which is a scale to evaluate motivation for change. What is the stage of motivation of the person? And Lucas is there, not thinking of stopping. He doesn't think e-cigarettes brings him any problem. People that want the change is the mother. I mean, she took him to me, but he has a very low perception of risk and is very resistant to any changes. We also used Assist, which has a tobacco specific area, and Craft, which shows that he uses e-cigarettes to relax, by himself, and he hides the use in his family. He's always trying to hide that he's smoking so much. And we start designing the necessary intervention. So there's a need for brief intervention plus monitoring. Lucas has light anxiety, the use of vape as emotional regulator. So within the dependency of physical dependency, nicotine dependency, we see that he has already symptoms of withdrawal, like being annoyed when irritated when he's not smoking, psychological dependency, or that is he smokes to deal with anxiety, to relax, and the behavioral part, which is related to the habits that he always uses it when studying, before going to bed. So we start mapping the roles of nicotine, of his use for emotional regulation, a false sensation of focusing on study, to evade family conflicts, and belonging to a group. This is Marina, who is 14, and she says that she found a colorful vape in her daughter's belongings. She started smoking when she was 13, influenced by her friends also. She used it at school breaks and video calls that she makes every night with her friends, and they vape together. And she brings smoking as something aesthetical because she thinks it's beautiful and to belong to the group. There's also the family context here, a strict mother, a permissive father, intensive conflict with her mother. And regarding her motivation, Marina starts contemplating to stop smoking. There are some things that really bother her when she's consuming, but she does not want to leave this group. She uses it to relax and socially, but she's been showing signs of escalation of the use of vape and emotional problems with friends. She feels that she belongs, she thinks it's beautiful, emotional regulation, and avoiding conflicts with the mother.
And everybody uses it. So when we're going to design the therapeutic plan, we're going to start about the general goals. Reduction is improvement of emotional regulation. Because if I regulate the emotional part, I decrease the importance of vaping. That's the idea of this approach, especially among youngsters. Increase of autonomy, strengthen family communication, and prevention of relapse. So I will bring a highlight about techniques of motivational techniques, combine techniques, intervention with the school, medical follow-up when necessary, and monitoring motivation. So the idea is to design a individual therapeutic trail for each type of teenager. The idea is to how to address without increasing resistance, how to correct myths without morality. Did you know there's nicotine? Do you know there are bad substances? So that's not the idea. So how are we going to work ambivalence, and how are we going to involve the family without guilt? Trying to understand what's the moment of that teenager. Is it experimenting? Is it evolving to dependency? So we must understand that there's no one correct strategy. You have one strategy for each person at each moment. So we must have an array of techniques to adapt to the reality of that individual, that teenager. So we have a first phase. You have here in both examples, when you have the family there together, it's very hard for a teenager coming without an external demand. It does happen, but it's less common. So obviously, we cannot occupy the same place as the mother, the father, the school who forced him to be there. So first thing, humanized intake and establishing a bond. We'll use motivational interview to address ambivalence, strengthen internal motivation for change, using open questions, avoiding confrontation, and working self-efficiency and the importance of changing. So here are some strategic questions. I have a PDF version. Whoever wants to send an email to Abeadi, I can send them to you, and it's more explained in detail. It's fundamental to involve the family. Otherwise, we'll not be able to align these rules at the house and have assertive communication, and then we will not make progress. We will work substitution strategies. If he uses to relax, what else can he do to relax? If it helps with the feeling of belonging, what can I do about that? And then we conduct a follow-up, reviewing our goals and see what works. So therapies usually is the cognitive behavioral therapy because we notice triggers and works on change of behavior. Parental intervention work, so it's the family checkup, in which we help parents to understand the role of behavior without excessive punishing. So it's about helping parents to be empathic and understand what's behind that use and how that can represent suffering or a difficulty to deal with the fact of life. So parents must help teenagers address that. There are also interventions at ESP, ERT, aimed at schools because we cannot work the family member and not address the environment because consumption is related to friendships. So try to expand the approach to the school. We also work with harm reduction strategies, either to stop using or because it's what's possible to do at that moment. So it's an important strategy as well, reducing critical time, trying to reduce the times he uses, and if there is relapse, we will manage it. So the idea of what I could work in Lucas, the issue of social skills, night anxiety, peer pressure. So for each one, there are strategies and also types of approaches we can adopt. But as a message, a takeaway, I'd like to leave you with the message. It's in adolescence is vaping is a biopsychosocial issue. It's not an individual decision. It's related to how society sees and brings that as an opportunity of something new, as a glamorous thing, and reducing the perception of risk. And when we talk about treatment, of course, there are validated techniques such TCC, DBD, motivational interview, but good treatment combines science, bonding. So I cannot be extremely technical and not bonding with the patient or the family. They must believe in what you're doing, and they must believe in our relationship. And we must also work families and environments in general. There are various examples, but I'm going to skip to the end. So it's just for you to see what you can read when you follow the official ABH social media. And then there's a list of what not to do and what to do. So it's to offer alternatives, not being coercive, involving the family with communication, reinforcing autonomy. And the question is not why are they using? The question is, what can I do to be a safe part to help them in this process of change? Because we know that the opposite of dependency is not sobriety, it's connection. They start smoking, and in various phases to vaping, it's about connection. They think they will connect with their friends, for instance. So when we talk about treatment against vaping, we are talking about building other connections, building other ways of dealing with all of that turmoil that's going on. Thank you very much. Great. I think you showed an important point because Brazil was able to do that. When they asked me what was the main change, the main cause of you having such an efficient anti-tobacco law, social mobilization, when people start to understand that the use of nicotine is harmful for the environment, planetary health, and the passive smoker. So I'd like to invite Wesley. He's a police officer, and he will bring his view on this work of prevention. Hello. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. And in the name of the civil police, I will greet you all in the name of our General Chief, José Wellick, my immediate chief, the director of the Superior School of Civil Police, Giancarlo Zuliani. We greet you all. We greet everyone, every panelist. And I'd like to bring to you the work that we have, a prevention work we conduct in the civil police. I've been a police officer for 26 years, 20 years working only with investigation. So civil police officers, we have many experiences. We go to different and difficult environments. And that makes us grow more mature because we have a lot of contact with reality, with no filter, with true feelings, sadness and crying and many other things. When my slide appears, I will give you some context. I will show you the drug museum of the civil police. Does any one of you know that drug museum of the civil police? Please raise your hands. I see that only a few people among the audience who knows the drug museum. But if you type on Google the name of the museum, you will find it, and then you will be able to access the website and be able how to hire our service. It's a service. How did it start? I'm waiting for my slide. How did that drug museum start? It was conceived in the late 1980s by police officers that work in the drug department, anti-drug department. And at that time, they were learning about substances, consumption products, and showed it to other colleagues. Oh, this is interesting. Look how this works and that works. And at some point, they started thinking that maybe we could talk to the audience, give lectures in schools, talk about prevention, and that prevention started in the late 80s. Since then, many other police officers developed that type of prevention. So they went to many places, giving classes, giving lectures. And when I went to the high school of the civil police, and I'm responsible for the drug museum. Its name is actually Pilot Center for Education and Prevention Against the Use of Drugs and Violence. It's a large name, a big name. But the name that we usually use it's Drug Museum. So I went to the high school of the civil police in 2019, and since 2020, I've been managing that museum. And then came the pandemic. The pandemic was a positive factor for us. Talking about public management, we stopped and we thought, what are we offering? We offer a lecture. We started to read the international guidelines to prevent drugs and violence. of the UN Office Against Drugs and Crime. And there we saw that lectures were not very effective. So what should we do? Then I thought, well, I will no longer give lectures. And our audience are mostly public schools of the federal district, private schools, NGOs. We also give lectures in CIPADs, which are fairs. And on that occasion, schools used to call us and say, we're not having, and we said, we're not giving lectures anymore. We'll implement a different project and everything. And it did not work. What happened? You know, people started to call us constantly and say, Wesley, we need a place here in our schools. We need to hear you. Students need to hear a different voice. So I think there's a problem with my slide because it was supposed to be there. I think everybody is, the technicians are trying to solve. Meanwhile, I'm talking by myself, but it's working. These unforeseen events are part of life. So as I was saying about the lectures, they said, no, you must continue. And then I said, one of the teachers said, it's better than nothing. And that stuck to my head. It's better than nothing. So I'm sorry, guidelines, international guidelines, we must do something. Do you know how many civil servants are responsible for the place where I work? 3. Only 3. I have a colleague here in the audience. She's going to work with me. Now we have 2. Our audience, every year we cater to from 25 to 30 youngsters who hear our lectures. How do they work? In the past, we used to focus on the drug. Oh, cocaine, its immediate effect, and etc. Marijuana works like this and like that. So we remove that perspective. We want to talk about protection factors, risk factors. What else? About dreams that are destroyed for those who enter the drug.
That is what needs to be said. So in our lecture, we changed this perspective. We started a new approach, and consequently, interaction of the police person with this coat of arms that you can see here on my chest of the police person, the policeman with the student. You know, when we play with people when we're small talk because we go uniformed. Today I'm in black, also to allude to the uniform of our institution. But we use a specific type of plants, the uniformed civil shirt, and people say, well, take this, take that. And we'll say, okay, I'll hug the student, say, hey, how you doing? Are people nagging, annoying you? You're probably always joking around. Also, that's why they do that. No, so we become closer to that student. The role of the communitary policeman that needs to happen. We need to break this bias of the repressive police, and this is done gradually. The police institution is also part of prevention. When we talk about the factors of prevention and risk, and I'm insisting on this because I, Wesley, as a person, how am I? My religion, spirituality, my self knowledge, my limits. I have my limits. I need to know my limits. And how am I in my family context? How am I with my kids? Do I give them good examples? Do I intake lots of alcohol? Do I get drunk on their front? Is this a risk factor or is it a protection factor? Because, and I know for sure that in this audience, someone that had a father that is an alcoholist, the protection factor becomes a protection factor. The risk factor becomes a protection factor because they see their father coming drunk home, crashing the car. He gets stigmatized, and the person reverts this into something positive and does not want that situation happening to her. So she protects herself in the social context. The civil police is a small part of prevention, a very small part of prevention. But there's the uniformed police with PREJ, the firemen with the youth, the young fireman program, several other organs, bodies that are also responsible for prevention, and many of whom are here also. I know there are several people that are in the front line. Here are some pictures that you can see the places we go to. Here we have the police car. These guys here are from APAI. We take people with deficiency there also to our museum. We have the drug museum that is located in one of our institutions, and we have also the mobile museum also. And I'm going to do a very brief um, selection here to show you, because we take reflections of everything the person does. Everything the person does has a consequence. This speaks to them. And this is a research I carried out. I want to go back very quickly just to show you, the civil police provided to us in 2023 the federal master's degree, which was an agreement with the University of Brasilia, and had the opportunity to do that. And this was my study, the effectivity of the Museum of Drugs in changing perception of the consumption of psychotropic drugs. We were in 25 students. It was great. This is a study that I went to assess the service that exists since 1985. It's very important to assess, monitor, and based on all that, make decisions to provide better service. So the result of this study were 305 students were interviewed, both girls and boys, from the 7th year to the end of high school, the last year of high school, and we asked them, have you ever used alcohol, cigarettes, nargile, e-cigarettes, vapor, or pod? 120 answered, that is 39.3% responded that yes, they have used these substances. Regarding the use by substance of those that said yes, we had 110 said alcohol was first. Second place was e-cigarettes to smoke, which is divided by nargile, e-cigarettes, vape, and pod. And third place, tobacco, conventional tobacco cigarettes. So we had this result that shows also supporting, corroborating the studies that Paulo showed, that it is a problem. It's second place, the e-devices. Frequency of in comparison to those that consume alcohol, sometimes they answer 90%, and those that also smoke tobacco, 86.4%. We also have the consumption by e-devices. Sometimes 76.3% have at least used it once, twice a year, 11% more or less, and once a year around 20%. This confirms, corroborates everything Paulo has mentioned here. Within the context of the federal district, among teenagers, 305 teenagers, more than 94% of public schools. We also assessed the change in perception. I'm going to read just a few to show you. The last column, from 1 to 5, how do you evaluate, how would you evaluate the improvement of your capacity of making decisions on the use of drugs ever participating in the program? So around 57%, more or less. And do you believe that uh, that policemen help prevent drugs? Answering to this question was 52% that answered yes. Why did we want to know that, guys? Because oftentimes, lots of people don't want us to talk about prevention in the school, but police is part of society. It's inserted in society. Police has to be a friend. Um, we have to stop thinking that a police has to be repressive. Police men and women, increasingly every day, technologies, information, becoming more mature, this have improved, the type of investigation has improved. Here, a very interesting question that we made. What did you like the most? Asking the students. The museum of drugs, the lecture of the police being at school. Museum was first, second place lecture, and even joked, okay, I'm not going to your school anymore. I'm just taking you to the museum. We'll make a lecture there, digital lecture, and we don't even show up in your school. The being there was last. Another important point that stands out, did your school conduct any other activities? So remember when I talked about effectiveness of just one lecture? In fact, one lecture is going to call attention, but at that specific time. But what about after that? There's a path we found that the study made us decide on something. Make the school do some type of preventive action before we go there, because it will sum up from the school will do their part and sum up with a presentation after that, and then we'll conclude very neatly this type of prevention. So we also have the change of perception question, combined with the risks and how to protect oneself. Most people said and answered, and we saw that the result here proved that our action in the museum is very efficient. Going to the actions, public policy actions per se, we have Law 9294/1996, Article 2, which who's over 40, over 50, here knows that cigarette advertising pieces were amazing. We saw Paulo telling us how incisive the e-cigarette advertising have been. Very attractive. This connection that Sabrina mentioned, that's what the youth want. They want connection. They want belonging. They don't want to listen, oh, cigarettes have this and that. And this really called our attention when talking to teenagers, whether regardless of our actions, we weren't always talking to them. We see that. Most of our actions are more basic or universal in this sense. So prohibiting propaganda, advertisement, helped stop smoking in closed environments. Since 1996, we have this law. My wife in 2022 had a boss that used to smoke e-cigarettes in work environments. Guys, this law is in force. It is the prohibited of use of cigarettes and all types of smoking device, and any other type of smoking instrument device, whatever it is that you smoke. Is there smoke? You cannot be consumed in closed environments. This law is enforced today. It's not because it's an device that it doesn't smell like cigarette that you can smoke in a collective closed environment. the convention slash framework. Brazil was a leading force in the convention slash framework in the first treaty in history regarding the protection of health against the harm that tobacco causes. We have also law RDC 46 that Sandra mentioned. It was revoked due to the other law, 855, because 855 is even stricter. It forbids manufacturing, importation, selling, distribution, storage, transport, and advertisement. Because sometimes you make an international travel, Paraguay, for example, right next door brings the e-device in their luggage. You cannot do that. That's contraband. That's trafficking. We have a very serious question. Should we regulate it or not? Should we let them smoke it? Will that end trafficking? No, it will not end trafficking. The civil police has made some arrests and has not so many, only 700 of e-devices that were seized. Federal and road police, they make the most actions on seizure because it's very close to Paraguay. The Brazilian Service Revenue, together with the other with our body, have the federal police body and road police body have instruments to stop these e-devices coming into our country. The strategies, I'll mention Sabrina once again. What is the most important strategy, guys? Information. All of you here are multipliers. All of you here need to talk, inform, clarify, settle doubts, present real cases. We had a case in the federal district of death by the consumption of e-device for smoking. We had one case showing so boosting and fostering prevention and education based on evidence, not things that do not exist. So factors of protection and risk, as I mentioned, data on these harmful activities and devices. There's a web series on e-cigarettes that is really cool.
And when you look at it in YouTube, few access it. Put a web series there in their classroom to show the cost benefit of regulation. The Institute of Cancer, INCA, has already showed that in public hearings. Regulating is not a good thing. Yes, it doesn't. It's not worth it because we'll spend much more. So the math won't work. They want to create a new generation of smokers. It's a new Hollywood success compared with the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. Strengthening surveillance, warning, fines, seizing. There are some strategies. Our Congresswoman will address it. We have some of bills, PL 5008, which wants to regulate 2151, wants to criminalize manufacturing, importing, and commercialization of e-cigarettes. And we also have public policies and challenges. Maintain prohibition or regulate. So we need a firm and coordinated public response. And the message I'd like to leave you is from that book by Mario Sergio Cortella, in which he says, do your best within your conditions. And that's it. And together with what? That video I will bring together that 3 words from the opening video of Freemind. So you will do your best with what you have, with what's within your reach, with what? With courage, commitment, and love. Thank you very much, everyone. Great, Wesley. Thank you. You asked a provocational question in the sense that we must regulate for sale or not. I think Juliana will talk about Colombia's experience where e-cigarettes are regulated and which were the challenges she faced there or they are having there, if it's really a good idea to regulate e-cigarettes. Welcome, Juliana. Thank you. Can you hear me? Unfortunately, I'd love to do my lecture in Portuguese, but the most I could do was to bring my slides in Portuguese, and I hope they help you. Well, my perspective is based on prevention. I work on a research and prevention institution that aims at fight the use of drugs and other relevant situations. And my approach is prevention. My main approach is prevention, but we always do prevention based on evidence. In research we conducted in the Novos Homos institution from Colombia, we have been working for 23 years, and as I said, we have always did research plus prevention. We do both. And what's concerning is that accelerated increase of the use of vapes and e-cigarettes, and how there is a big change from traditional cigarette, which is decreasing, and we see that in other countries as well. Whereas e-cigarettes, its consumption is increasing. We did a research with 6,000 students from high schools, and I think here in Brazil it is primary and secondary schools. It shows that 93% of students are familiarized with and know e-cigarettes. In comparison with a study in 2016, only 50% knew about them. So 50%. So it's to show how the use and consumption of these cigarettes have become popular among youngsters and adults. 40% of these parents, of these young people, know they use these cigarettes. And 20% approve that use. They don't see any problem. And actually they say it's fine. It smells good, and if it's something smells good, it can't harm you. We see in this research. There are 2 data here, one in blue and the other one in pink. In blue, we have a national research about psychoactive substances in 2016 and our research in 2023. They both show how the prevalences of cigarette use have decreased from 24 in 2016 to from 8 to 5%. So that decrease is significant. However, for e-cigarettes, this has increased from 15% in 2017. We're talking about school kids, school youngsters, to 33% in 2023. And those who do that as a habit jumped from 9% to 14%. So in only 6 years, so it's a significant increase. But why do they use it? This is a summary of what was said by my colleagues before, because they're modern. When we compare one of the qualitative research we did, they say Only old people smoke cigarettes, but vaping, e-cigarettes, it's modern. Young people do that because we're modern, because they taste nice, because they taste like bubble gum. They don't leave a bad smell like traditional cigarettes. And young people are so susceptible to what other people say. If it tastes good, I will do it as well. It seems that it does not harm because it smells nice. There's a pressure, there's a peer pressure. And the example that comes from families as well. My uncle, one of my parents might use it, or my parents' friend, so I can do this as well. So these are favorable attitudes regarding the use of vaping. Ads, as we said, plays a fundamental role in the use and popularization through social media. Social media have been in charge of increasing the vaping considerably. And because many parents accept that use with no problem, because it's different than with other substances such as marijuana. Only parents usually say no. But in the case of vaping, parents are not presenting any barrier. So the consumption of vaping is a problem because it contains nicotine. And many of them, they sell themselves if they were nicotine free. They have flavorizers and other substances, but they do contain nicotine and they do generate dependency. And we know that that dependency and craving is generated by nicotine. Even though they say there's no nicotine, they do have from 3 to 9 milligrams of nicotine actually. And many start smoking cigarettes because they seem harmless, they smell well, they taste nice. But since it contains substances and they must offer the high that the substance offers, they end up moving to traditional tobacco because it's cheaper. So we see that e-cigarettes start being used to decrease the use of traditional tobacco, which was apparently much more dangerous. But we see an effect and a harm because they start using vape, then they use traditional cigarettes to have that feeling they are seeking. We know that a teenager can spend up to $50 per month buying vapors, buying the device, the refill, and that's a lot of money. In countries such as ours, it's a lot of money for a young person, even though they use it. Although they use it. It's becoming truly the drug that paves the way for other substances. Alcohol used to do that, but now we have a change with vape. We think that probably it will be the substance that will be the gateway to other drugs. Unless we not talk with youngsters and families explaining why. We have mentioning some examples already, but the first thing is it does not contain nicotine, so it will not generate need to continue to consume, which is false because we know that even those that say that do not contain nicotine, they do have from 3 to 6 milligrams. But the most common ones in the market, they contain 9 to 18 milligrams. And for having a low nicotine level, they do not cause problems. This is also false because in addition to having many substances, they have toxic substances among its ingredients. And some of these substances, when they overheat within the device, they generate more harm, such as formaldehyde, which is a cancerogenious substance that when it's overheated, it can harm one's lungs. Another myth: e-cigarettes are useful to stop smoking conventional cigarettes. Maybe for some people, yes, but they did stop smoking traditional cigarette. But this does not happen with young people and not with all adults. They actually continue to consume because e-cigarettes do contain nicotine. And they need it, this, like traditional cigarettes, they need more quantities, more use to reach the high, to get the high. It decreases or ends anxiety. Anxiety results from abstinence of nicotine, which you relieve when you consume more. That's what we call tolerance. There's a greater need to consume sweets, for instance, in a shorter period of time. Cigarettes do not have toxic substance, which is a myth, it's regulated, etc. Of course, that's false. And we know that they contain various toxic substances. The devices have some volatile composites, heavy metals such as nickel, tin, lead, and flavorizers, which in some places began to be prohibited. This buttery flavor is by Viacetin. They produce vapor, water vapor. That's another myth. There's no combustion, so it's healthy. But actually, it's not vapor. It are small particles of water, which is an aerosol actually, not a vapor. They are approved by health authorities in Brazil. In Brazil, it's prohibited. In Colombia, it's not prohibited, it's legalized. But it's regulated to only 1 year and a only 1 year and a half only 1 year and a half ago. So that regulation is recent and cannot be consumed by minors. And labels must contain the possible harm, the all pros. And there are other countries in Latin America where e-cigarettes are prohibited but is consumed. But the tendency is to regulation.
Also, the truth is they are useless to stop smoking marijuana, but the truth is several people smoke marijuana and not the devices. This also reduces the odor and some elements that are unwanted by marijuana. Of course, this increases the use of the substance. And this is we demystified the myth that it's less harmful than conventional. The vape increases use in a prolonged way over time and in greater amounts. Publicity, advertisement is great influence, as we saw before. Social networks also a great influence. They promote also sale, distribution. There are social network groups where we are able to identify where you can buy it, and this happened after pandemic. This sales channel online, the networks with greater exposition to cigarette advertisements. Snapchat is for teenagers Who uses Snapchat? What adult uses is Snapchat, right? I mean, in fact, social networks for old people, I mean, for adults that is Facebook. Teenagers say only my mom, only my aunts and my grandma use Facebook. It's around 50%, less than 50%. It's in fact changing for young people. It's very common to see celebrities. I really liked Paulo's presentations when he talks about celebrities, influencer, because they normalize use, making it seem pleasant. Of course, they want to be like the influencers, so they're going to emulate these behaviors. What can we do then? Sabrina talked a bit about this, so I'll be brief in this specific slide. There are several questions that Paulo also talked about. So, how should I talk to my kids? Should I talk to them or not? Would it be better not to talk? What should I tell them? When should I start talking to them? Right now? Or is it too late? If they are already using electronic cigarettes, what can I do as a father? And for public policy developers, what can we do? And a good example for parents. So these are just hints, tips to take into consideration for prevention. It's important that fathers that are closer to us get informed. What does a father and mother do? Usually, he will seek for information. I heard that this is not good, so I'll search on Google. Then you find infinite information. It's good to stop smoking. It's useful. It's not toxic. But there are other websites that talk about uh, the harmful nature. So the parent does not know what to do. We would need to have an observatory or some type of tool to for those people that are educate to talk about what are the websites that are safe for the parents to search for information. I found information on the internet, so we'll talk. No, it's not like that. They need to understand what's happening, what is the action mechanism, how harmful is it, and why. When we talk to our kids, they know more than us about this topic. Sometimes we say, "Did you know that it had this component content?" Yes, mom, but it also has this and this and that. They know everything. They know everything. But the point here is that you, as parents, need to have the necessary tools to talk to your kids that you and that you don't have that attitude, oh, I know everything. No, you needs to be an actual conversation. Consumption is is beginning earlier. A key aspect here is that if friends use it, it's important that you assess if your son uses it too, because if your kid is not using it, it will soon. Establish clear rules. You should not do that. That's not something you do quickly. It needs to be established early on when the child has rules, is still growing up. It's normal to have and follow these rules. So it's important to establish what are the punishments for not following the rules, the the schedules, and then it becomes easier to establish rules regarding the vapors. And they can also be involved with other substances. It's important to have this opportunity to talk about substances, and if it's necessary to offer help, because our kids don't see themselves as the one that is going they see us, so they don't see us as the person that is punished and taking away their friends. But we have to be solid, consistent, but of a friend. I'm sure about this. And mention these rules in front of your kid, so it's clear for all of them. And if you believe that it's best to consume e-cigarettes because it's less harmful, you can be very clear about that or positive. And by saying that, you you open the door about this discussion. And to conclude, I will leave my conclusions. The use of e-cigarettes is increasing very rapidly. This is something that really needs to be an alert, a call to action, not only at the level of the family, but also at all levels, school, community, and public policies too. There is greater availability of these substances. We know that a risk factor for the use of this type of psychoactive substances, is how easy it is to access it, its availability, parental information, communication is crucial. And I always like concluding my presentation saying that it's not about the information that you can provide your kids. It's about it's important that our kids can talk to us and talk about why they are using it. That would be much more useful than just providing information. And as in the prevention and the use of other substances, it's important to establish clear rules. To me, the key is establish clear rules and continuous communication, to listen, and to listen. Thank you, Gisele, for your presentation. I think we have been very in line and maybe talk about a possible flexibilization of the regulation of e-cigarettes, but I'd like to invite Congresswoman Gisele Simoni. Although time is very short, uh, Congresswoman, we began very late also, 8:40. 8:40, everyone was still sleeping. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to first of all thank you. Thank Mr. Paulo Martelli for this 10th edition of the Congress, which has every year surprised us positively in the sense of updating and the relevance of the information for the entire Brazilian society. Thank and compliment my panel colleagues, especially, first of all, Sandra, first because she teaches us a lot and brings topics to raise this important discussion. Professor Paulo, professor, physician, and has been within the National Congress tackling important debates, and Sabrina Wesley that brought us such important information. And as a congresswoman of the state of Mato Grosso that has acted for many years in PROCON and the fiscalization, Wesley, not as a police, but having the power of police in PROCON, getting into some important discussions that Brazil needs to somehow engage in so that we, in my view, have an actual law to address this topic. 20 years ago, we got into an actual and an important discussion and were able to enact Law 246. It was a great advancement, and we were able to achieve amazing, exceptional results in Brazilian society. I'm not that old, of course, but we had smoking spots, smoking hubs, and that was absurd. We were in restaurants and we were people next to us while we were eating, smoking and with the smoke on our face. So we don't have this anymore. So this is great advance in our country, but we are living a moment that, as we saw today in the panels, that a backward movement because e-devices for smoking, although prohibited in Brazil, they are increasingly closer to our youth, our adults, and this false belief that it's something good, that it's here to help stop smoking, the conventional cigarette, and anxiety, and all the artifices that industry uses, that it was shown here from the appearance, the design of the device, the lack of odor. All this is very attractive to our society. And because our constitution establishes that we are live in a rule of law, we need to have a legislation that is as strict as the Anvisa's resolution, so that we do not see arguments like I have seen in several moments in my trajectory as lawyers in Procom. I received defenses from companies saying that in Brazil, it's only prohibited to do something because of a law. And the fact that Anvisa has a resolution, that does not mean they have to follow this in Brazil. So this absurd exists. It's a defense argument. So when I assumed office in Congress, I presented the Bill 488 of 2023, which reinforces Anvisa's resolution that this habit of us selling, manufacturing, importing, advertising, offering e-devices for smoking, that it should become a crime. That's what the bill says, so that we have a punishment of detention because you begin in a closed system regime from 2 to 4 years of detention or of punishment. So at Procom, at the Brazilian Revenue Service, we frame it in we classify it in other types of situations, but there's no specific punishment in this sense. So it's important that this bill be enacted and becomes a law. That is, when it's offered to people below 18, that this punishment is doubled. So instead of 4 years, from 2 to 4 years, 4 to 8 years of detention. So making this bill go ahead in the Congress is not easy, because there are Congress people like me that are against e-devices, but there are those that, with the argument of generating jobs, collecting taxes for the country, want to regulate e-devices, like they did with electronic gambling, e-gambling, and we are seeing the harm that have been caused to Brazilian population. So my presentation here is in the sense of that it's very important to educate, prevent, but we also need to repress, strongly repress in our country, so that this also is educational and stop crime being practiced. I'm also the rapporteur of PL 949 of 2024 that enacts a national policy regarding pulmonary obstructive chronic diseases of our country.
Because it's the fourth cause of death in our country. Brazil spends nearly 72 million per year in the health system due to pulmonary diseases, and it's increasingly common. Unfortunately, we have youngsters without breath. They run a little bit and they lose their breath, or they can't speak directly. So not having losing their breath in Brazil has to do with control of cigarettes, control of pollution, and the mobilization of each citizen, mobilization of organized civil society that's attentive to these bills at the National Congress is fundamental to avoid retrocession. Our colleague Juliana talked about Colombia's experience. I do not believe that regulation in Brazil is the way out. On the contrary, we will continue to have this market that's increasingly difficult to control here. So vape kills, vape actually makes Brazilian public health have an increase in cost, and we must mobilize to fight that. So against vape, less e-cigarettes in Brazil so that we can have a more quality health, public health. Thank you, Congresswoman, for your words. We talked about this at the plenary session at the Congress because this now not only something that addresses only health. We must bring together the Justice Secretariats, Justice Ministry, Public Safety. Lutufo also mentioned that on Sunday about the importance of surveillance. We're doing a lot of education on health. We have been making available information, but our country is very big. We have many borders, so understanding that this role of public safety is important. And I'd like to ask a question to everyone after these panels. What would be, Wesley, just for us to summarize, because I believe people who work with health know a lot, but what would be the role of the police in fighting tobacco, nicotine, as we already have a protocol of fighting that within the market, but we see very few enforcement of that, at least in states. We see that a lot at the national level, like revenue service, federal police at the national level. But what would be fundamental, I mean, so that the police is no longer only repressive, but if we have a community police, what's your role as a policeman today? How important is that to maybe fight? I'm not saying it will happen, but to maybe fight if you have a more flexible in regulation of e-cigarettes. How could you help us on that issue? Think about the Charter Convention. Don't forget that health is the one that coordinates all of these actions. Yes, the role of police, well, police is usually have a repressive role, but the police is actually evolving to becoming a more community police, to talk more and be more present. So what can be done? Improve communication even more, have better interaction with all agencies, because it is a working group. It's not only one agency or entity that will solve the issue. Public safety has its role and it's important regarding issues to seizing and repressing, but the social side of it, it's extremely important. It's important to reach the hand of that citizen. How? Giving information, giving enabling conditions for these people to not enter this world of e-devices, and also playing that role aimed at health, through an integrated approach with different agencies, PROCON, Federal Revenue Service, Civil Police, everybody working together, fighting against e-devices. I have a suggestion to make as well. I think we face a little bit of difficulty in the state of São Paulo regarding seizing and surveillance. What to do with those devices? Because sometimes the police, the chief of police, they do not want to have that material. And sometimes we have to do that sanitation surveillance, and sometimes the establishment gets back that, and the establishment says it was theft. So understand, have an MO, thinking about disposal and safe, and to how to keep these seized material, because when we do the police report and we seize the merchandise, we don't have where to store it. And because the police does not store it, no one wants to store it. Yes, we must evolve in this sense so that we can do the same with drugs. They are burned. So the laws must reach that level so that when you have that merchandise seized after a certain time, everything must be burned and be removed out of context. And for us of the academia, it's important to understand what's going on in Brazil. I have a colleague and we want to study the chemical composition, which are the main chemicals involved in these merchandise. So maybe thinking about a donation for research, because this will also help to keep public policies. Thinking about burning as well. Yes. So I'd like to thank your words and your presence and the commitment of Gisela's, of the Congresswoman Gisela, and I'd like to hear you, because as ambassador of the Freemind community, and we bring together so many people, so many different people in the world of prevention and chemical dependency. How is the project 4840 in Congress? And what scenario do you see, and if there is something we can do to accelerate the approval of that bill? Regarding the bill, it's important for society to know, and that within the contracts there's lobby for everything, lobby to shelve or to make it happen. And today, actually, it's in the Commission of Constitution and Justice, and we are doing this work for it to be discussed by the commission. And we also have an attachment to it with the bill by Flavia Moraes, which aims at the to address commercialization, to prohibit that in Brazil. And what society can do is mobilization. There's no other way. Today, social media is a great ally, because, so for instance, every week uh, the Congress has a survey about the bills that are mostly addressed or are mostly or that are pending before the Congress. So we must show that there is a collective and public interest, and this helps us a lot to justify internally, and also helps to make that issue discussed in the House of Representatives, because we must be stronger than the industry, because they are trying to lobby for regulation. So the biggest tool we have is social mobilization. So I'd like to close this panel now because we'll have another one, but speakers will be at your disposal for you to ask questions. And I'd like to thank the presence of every one of you. And I'd like to recall that the best weapon is always information, but society has to surveil a lot. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, everyone. Before taking the picture, I'd like to give you a message. Who was at the opening ceremony? I spoke. I wrote a text and talked about the text, and that we cannot forget the roots, because sometimes we grow a lot and we forget from where we came. And I did that, unfortunately, because Freemind was born with the support of Father Haroldo and Augusto Cury. And I forgot to mention that in the opening, that Augusto Cury is a very popular writer, and because of him we became popular. So we cannot forget that. So I'm saying that everyone, please, everyone who purchases an Augusto Cury book tomorrow at the closing ceremony will participate in a draw to get a registration, how accommodation, and and food for next Freemind. So please participate in our closing ceremony. Congresswoman, thank you very much for your presence. Wesley, Juliana, Sabrina, Paulo, my namesake, Sandrine, Sandra as well. God bless you all. So let's take a photo now. And let's move to the other panel because we're a little bit late today.